And the truth is, everybody's got a right to live. We have to fight for that right to be upheld to live. The Bible says to us in Isaiah 10, woe unto those who legislate evil and rob the poor of their rights. Even Jesus said in this Holy Week, on this Monday, he said, Jesus once said, the laborer is worthy of his hire. As we gather on this Monday, we should be reminded, I'm reminded as a Christian pastor, yesterday began Passover for our Jewish brothers and sisters who refused to serve any longer under Pharaoh for slave wages, which merely means you do all the work and Pharaoh gets all the pay. But also this is the day that Jesus turned over the tables in the temple because they were stealing from the people. Declared, my house shall be a house of prayer for all God's people. Shook up the heretical leadership of the church, the religious cultists of that time, caused Herod and Caesar and Pilate to tremble because Jesus had an economic critique of how they were misusing religion to oppress the people. And so everybody's got a right to get those ballots in, get those mail ballots, get those votes in. The Bessemer 6,000 is in your hands now. You can vote to unionize yourself and not only change what's happening in Alabama, but change what's happening across the South, or at least begin to show the way forward. You can join that grand tradition that's been in Alabama for years before. We'll talk some about that today. You can join what happened in North Carolina when we were able to unionize the largest hog processing plant that they said would never be unionized. They constantly pit black, brown, and workers against each other, but they decided that they had the right to vote, and they were going to vote the union in and vote right to work out. Today, as we come, we want to go a little deeper in this analysis about what's going on as we stand with the Bessemer 6,000 there in Bessemer, Alabama. We welcome you from all over the country, the world. The Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival on another one of our Moral Monday segments. And on behalf of all of the Poor People's Campaign coalitions across the country, and our co-chair, the Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris, our co-moderator today, the Reverend Rob Stevens, and so many others, we greet you. But it's so important in this moment that as we do history, we don't forget history. And as we engage, we don't act as though we're the first ones to engage or the only ones to have engaged. That we tie in to the great tributaries of liberation that all flow into the great river of justice. And so today I want to have a conversation. Then we're going back to Bessemer and replay some of the rally from last week. But we want to have a conversation with Robin Kelly, Professor Robin Kelly. He was earned his bachelor's degree from California State University, Long Beach. And he earned a master's in African American history and a doctorate in U.S. history from UCLA. From 2006 to 2011, he was a professor of American Studies and Ethnicity at the University of Southern California. 1994 to 2003, he was a professor of history and Africana Studies at New York University, as well as the chair of New York University's History Department from 2002 to 2003. He served at Brooklyn College with my good friend Liz Theo Harris. Jean Theo Harris is. He served at Dartmouth College as a Montgomery Fellow. He's also served at Oxford University, the first African-American historian to do so since the chair was first established in 1922. He was the Harold Vian Holmesworth Professor of American History. And that chair had been in existence since 1922. and he was the first one to serve there. And he is also the author of a biography of Thelonious Monk. Now, Dr. Kelly, that's where I really want to stop right there and talk a little bit about Brother Monk. You know, he's got roots in North Carolina.
Sure does.
Over in Rocky Mount. Mm-hmm. And I know if Miss Yara Allen is on the phone, she's probably saying, just forget everything else. Let's just talk about Thelonious Monk. But we can't do that. But I do know, I believe Thelonious Monk had a deep social consciousness as well, as most great jazz artists did. But we want to jump right in. Welcome to this Moral Monday, Dr. Kelly, and I'm so glad you would join us today.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be with you, Reverend Barber, really.
Great. Well, in this time that we have, you know, you and I have known each other for a while, but let's talk about this fight some. You know, shortly after 2016 election, you wrote a piece telling everyone, don't forget the South. And we've been saying that. I've been saying it ever since the days of Moral Monday in North Carolina. I took a look one time at, you know, I think if you just go to 13 former Confederate states, you're talking about almost 170 electoral votes in a race to 270. Mm-hmm. If you add the Southwest states, it's over 180. You're talking about 33% of the United States House of Representatives and 26 members of the United States Senate in the former so-called Confederate states. So which means if you can win all of those and control them, you only need 25 Senate votes from the other 37 states. Right. We were talking about how in North Carolina, the activist community won same-day registration in 2007, and then President Obama won in 2008, first time North Carolina had even voted for a Democrat, let alone an African American, since Jimmy Carter. But it was the activists and the community believing what could happen in the South, even when so often there are aspects of the party politics that kind of write the South off and just hand it over. But they're handing over so much power unnecessarily. A third of all poor people live in the South. A third of all poor white people live in the South. The power of the diversity now, 42% of the population being African American. So we see Georgia, but you know that even before Georgia, what happened in Virginia in 2008, and North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and there's a lot of enthusiasm around that, and there's enthusiasm for this union drive in Bessemer. But here's my question: folks still seem to be surprised by movements emerging in the South. Mm-hmm. Isn't that sense of being surprised kind of unfounded? And what do you think causes that? And as a historian and as an activist, what would you say to so-called progressive people who keep writing off the South? And what does your work on Alabama's history teach us about multiracial labor organizing and how we ought to understand that as we face this moment we're in?
Right. That's a great question. Before I answer it, I just want to give a shout out to other authors, because I know people are reading my book, but Bobby Wilson wrote this wonderful book called America's Johannesburg, and Horace Huntley is also one who's a real great scholar of Alabama, and Michael Goldfield, who wrote The Southern Key. These are all texts that I think that get even deeper into what we're going to talk about today. Now, you have been saying for a very long time that the South is really the epicenter of this country's multiracial democratic movements, and evidence of it keeps popping up. You go back to Reconstruction, to the interracial phase of populism, all the labor struggles in the mines and mills in the countryside of the South. And when we start to really dig deep into Alabama, we learn why, those people who rule the South, no, they don't live in conservative states. In fact, this is why Black people were disenfranchised, as well as some whites, why Jim Crow was imposed in the first place.
Say that one more time. I want that slow. You said, okay. Those who rule. I want you to say, because one more for to hear that one sentence real clear. Say that one more time.
So those who rule the South, the class that rules the South, they understand that they don't live in a conservative state. They don't live in this conservative region. We call it conservative, we call it backward, but actually they're trying to do everything they can to suppress those very democratic movements that you've talked about and written about, for years. That is why the South is anti-labor. It's not because the people are anti-labor, it's because they passed laws that make it difficult for those movements to emerge and to thrive. That's why the South is anti-immigrant, not because the people are anti-immigrant, because those who rule the South are. They are afraid that an interracial, multiracial movement would threaten their power. And that is why this is constant war in the South around voting rights, labor rights, immigration rights, just the right for any basic civil rights. So if you look at Alabama itself, it has a very long history of labor struggles going back to the United Mine Workers in the 1890s, the Knights of Labor, all the way, especially the 30s and 40s, which in many ways is the heyday of multiracial, interracial labor struggles in the South. And that was because of two things. One, the role that the left, particularly Black and white communists, played in the 30s, but also because of the New Deal. The New Deal basically protected workers and provided things that we take for granted today, like the National Labor Relations Board, which mediate disputes, and also just the right. The New Deal basically guaranteed the right of workers to organize unions. And it so happens that Alabama then and now still has the highest unionization rate of any state in the South. Bessemer, which is of course a suburb of Birmingham, part of the larger greater Jefferson County area, they had one of the most dynamic unions in the country, which was the International Mine, Mill and Smelter Workers Union, which is very much like today's retail warehouse department store union, which is organizing the Amazon workers. And
what year was that with the miners?
So they started in 1933. They began.
See, that's that point, 1933. So we don't need to ever just think this movement or what we're seeing is like something that just happened. This is I think my mama was born in 1933. She's 86 years old, right? She's born. I think she was born in 1933, something like that. That's huge in terms of our understanding. That's right during the middle of the Great Depression, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they were also up against a kind of behemoth company, whereas today is Amazon. In those days, it was the Tennessee Coal and Iron Company, which was part of U.S. Steel. And they used everything. They had company police, they used violence, they used intimidation, they tried to use racism, but they could not, and this is really important, they could not break the solidarity of Black and white workers in that union. They tried company unions to try to draw off the white workers, and it didn't work. But what did work, ultimately, after the end of World War II, was anti-communism. It worked. Taft-Hartley Act was passed in 1947, which basically undid a lot of the New Deal labor protections. And what it did do, in addition to like outlawing sympathy strikes and that sort of thing, it required union officers to sign affidavits affirming that they were not communists. And those unions that did not do it were no longer able to use the National Labor Relations Board process. They were kicked out, and they were kicked out of the CIO, the Congress of Industrial Organizations. And one of the tragedies, and this is a tragedy that's related to today, is that the NAACP, particularly someone named Herbert Hill, played a role in basically undermining mine mill, again, driven by anti-communism, and writing letters saying that, this is a dangerous union, we need to do something about it. And as a result, Alabama in 1953 becomes a right-to-work state. And a right-to-work state basically means that unions are not protected. It means that no employee could be compelled to pay dues to a labor union as a condition of employment. And those dues are really important for unions to exist.
When you say that, and think about how, again, we have to deal honestly with history, that whatever money or resources was put there to get, a NAACP person at that time to write letters against the union, joined the side of those who were claiming anti-communism against the very union that had brought black and white people together, and was the key. What it was really is key and critical to transformation in the South. Now I understand when you said that, Julian Bond is just, they just wrote a book about his teaching at American University. Mm-hmm. And he shared in that book what the plans were for the March on Washington. Originally was a whole day of protest around union and labor issues. I mean, literally sitting in the streets and sit-ins. And then there was supposed to be the mass marching speech. Right. And Bayard Rustin and all of them wrote a letter and signed off on that. But it's interesting, people read it, what groups said were cold to the issue. Mm-hmm. And I think we just have to own this, that there's all, and when you just read that, it made me think about this statement that Dr. King made 56 years ago, this past Thursday, at the end of the Selma to Montgomery March. Now everybody says about voting rights, but this is what he said. He said, the threat of the free exercise by the ballot, by the Negro and white masses, by the Negro and white masses is what created a segregated society. Mm-hmm. This is what happened when the Negro and white masses of the South threatened to unite and build a great society, a society where greed and poverty would be done away with. Now, this is at the end of the march from Selma Montgomery, and King is talking about greed, poverty, and power. Mm-hmm. And he said the battle to suppress the vote and the battle to suppress labor rights, basically has been the tactic used by the Southern aristocracy to hold on to their money, right? And that's fine. And Rob sent me a note saying, and then after the corporate power structure and the racists, misused the NAACP to do that, then that same power structure turned around and outlawed the NAACP in Alabama.
Exactly. I mean, this is exactly the point. So 1953, the NAACP becomes outlawed by the same, it's the same organization that helped undermine the biggest threat to kind of the Southern oligarchy. And you're so right. I mean, if you look at, when we think about the history of Reconstruction, and this is something you wrote about so eloquently in your own work, Reconstruction doesn't end in 1877. It really comes to an end after it's crushed on the eve of the Wilmington coup d'etat. It's precisely the labor's power, multiracial labor organizing, that led to the disfranchisement of Black and some white workers. I mean, white workers in Oklahoma, for example, were disenfranchised by some of those laws. So it's lynching, disfranchisement, Jim Crow were all assaults on multiracial labor movements. And when it was revived again in the 30s, again, you get the same assault. When it revived again in the 60s, the same thing in the 70s.
Same assault. And one of the things I didn't think that you probably would say, that's what I will say, you said that you can tell me yes or no, that when you have these conversations about voting rights and labor rights, and while it is right to say, like the attacks on voting rights are racial, that's a protected category. We know we're in an interesting time because the Supreme Court just ruled a few years ago that if you do things to suppress the vote and it's just political, then they say it's okay. But if you do it based on race, then that's illegal. And so I understand the need to make sure you point out the the racist element of it. But we have to also make sure, I think we would agree, that we have to start talking about it's the battle between the ruling class and others.
Right.
You know, or the ruling class is ultimately what Dr. King called the Southern aristocracy, or the aristocracy in the country, the bourbon class, if you will, that is always trying to keep these multiracial alliances from coming together because of the way they could fundamentally change the power structure and then fundamentally change the economic landscape of the nation. Is that accurate to put it like that?
That's exactly accurate. And in fact, it is kind of dangerous to think of these voter disenfranchisement laws as simply, completely just anti-Black, because the consequences are consequences for all poor and working people. You know, I mean, think about, well, what we know is that what follows disfranchisement laws or voter suppression laws are laws against immigrants, laws against labor. I mean, 2016, the Alabama state legislature actually enshrined right to work laws in the Constitution. I mean, that was huge. And they were able to do it in part because Alabama had its own voter suppression laws. So this is it's a war against the class. And if we don't see it that way, we're not going to see why everyone needs to be in this fight, because it's about power. It's not just about, you know.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. So you've got 6,000 workers, 5,500 of them at Bessemer are Black. And yes, we got to lift that up, but we also have to look at how, when they win this fight, how it serves as a possible reset. And if it's done right, it has to bring together all the people who can stand against the powers of the ruling class. Now, I did not know, and I apologize for that. This y'all, you need to listen to this. Dr. Kelly just let us know that voter suppression started in earnest. And I don't know if you know this, Dr. Kelly, but I was put out of the AME Church in Selma during the anniversary of the Selma to Montgomery marches one year, because the Secretary of State came to a Bloody Sunday church event and was allowed to speak on the program. And in that church was saying to the audience that his voter ID law was in honor of the people.
Oh, no.
I mean, literally, it's a tape of this, that it was honoring the great legacy of the people that marched across that bridge. And to be quite honest, I was doing something, because when he got up to talk, I was like, And I heard Bob Zellner, you know, who was first white field secretary, say from the balcony, "Lie." And it caught my attention. I started paying attention, and I heard it. And then I said, I'm sitting in the pulpit, but I was on my phone. I shouldn't have been on the phone. I'm just be honest. Somebody had texted me, and I wasn't paying that much attention to him because I was like, okay, you're going to basically say Alabama's glad to have you here. You know, and that was when John Lewis was there. But they also had all of these white Republicans that would come down and white Democrats, and they would go to all the historical sites and say how great the history was, so on, so on. Then go right back to D.C. and support racist voter suppression. But anyway, when he said it, I said, "No, sir, you can't do that here." And the pastor said to me, "Reverend Barber, now everybody gets to have their say." And I said, "No, not in the faith tradition I come from. You don't get to just lie in the church in front of national media, and we just sit here." And he said, "Well, we're going to ask you to leave." And I said, and about 75 other people got up and left, and, you know, it hit the AP. But literally he was willing to say that. Now, this was prior to 2016. And what I hear you saying is that they used that power to gain seats in the legislature. And then one of the first acts they did was enshrine right to work in the Constitution.
Correct, yes.
Basically saying that the corporations have a constitutional right in this country, in this state, but the people don't have a constitutional right for fundamental basic labor rights and union rights. We have got to understand. And let me ask another question. Now we know, for instance, that Amazon donated millions of dollars to Black organizations. That was just a little chump change, considering that Bezos made $189 billion last year. But last year he makes this big announcement that he's going to give $10 million. And he lists, interestingly, he lists the organizations, civil rights and all that. And he said he's going to raise some additional money. And he declares that if he loses a few customers, that's fine, because he's for Black Lives Matter. And we understand he may have even given some stock to some organizations for their board, some of Amazon stock. But whatever he did, it wasn't $1 billion. It wasn't even 10% of what, just some chump change. Anyway, now, having said that, what do we make of that for him saying, I'm for Black Lives Matter, but for the Black lives and the white lives and the brown lives and his plans, he cuts their hazard pay that was only $2. He won't give them a union contract, even though you have to have a contract to do business with Amazon. If you ever go you want to order something from them, you have to sign a contract. They're gonna get that. They're gonna get that money, right? They're gonna get their money. But how contradictory is that? And how should we, be very wary of that, especially organizations who would give him cover by allowing him to do that.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great point. In fact, there are two things. The statement on their website, which is pretty astounding, it says, we stand in solidarity with our Black employees, customers, and partners, and are committed to helping build a country in a world where everyone can live with dignity and free from fear. That was the statement from June 9th, when he gave that $10 million. Dollars.
Yeah, $10 million.
And to organizations that he was clearly trying to buy their silence, in terms of anticipating what might happen. But it's such a slap in the face to say that, we want to make sure everyone can live with dignity and free from fear, when in fact, the conditions of work are without dignity. The rescinding hazard pay, I guess back in May, $2 an hour is not necessarily, freedom from fear. So he creates the conditions where they pretend to be such a progressive organization, they buy off, and this is typical. This has happened before. This the great moment in Richard Wright's Native Son, where Mr. Dalton, the wealthy, slumlord, can give money to charity, but then make all this money off of Black suffering. So, this is common, and yet we have to hold it up, because we have to be prepared, knowing that the fight ahead is not over. Even when the union wins this election, Amazon's not going to, lay down easily. They're going to contest the election. They're going to refuse to sign a contract. They're going to fight every step of the way, and we have to be prepared to stand in solidarity with the workers, which may mean boycott Amazon. It may mean, basically not taking the money. Organizations that believe in social justice don't need Amazon's money. And we need to be prepared for that, because this fight is not over. And these are tactics that they use alongside the union busting tactics to convince us that they're progressive. And one last thing is that, when you look at Amazon is promoting itself as supporting a $15 minimum wage, saying everyone else should make as much as we pay our workers. But everyone knows that unionized workers, warehouse workers in the Bessemer, Birmingham area make $20 an hour because they're union.
That's right.
So they're paying less money.
That's right. And 15 was started by, even saying fast food workers started it, even though I'm not suggesting first of all, it's a compromise anyway. It really ought to be 20. Living wages should be there. 15 was a basic compromise, started in the fast food industry. But you say on the one hand that you ought to be making as much as your work. Then you go to the union plant, they're making 20. And then what Bezos is basically saying, trust me. Well, trust you. You just took away hazard pay.
Right.
So without a contract, and then what else are you not giving your workers in terms of health care, in terms of you still can fire people at will. You don't want them to have just cause firing, and so many other things that the workers talk about. I mean, it really is a slap in the face. And I said the other day to all the organizations that ought to stand up and give the money back and call him out. So you didn't tell us the truth. You told us you were for Black Lives Matter, but even if they had to claim, we got new evidence now. We didn't have the evidence in June. Now we have new evidence, and stand with these workers, because 10 million, and some organizations may have got $500,000, $1 million, whatever. Even if he gave them stock money, is not worth the billions of dollars employees will make over time if they have a contract, if they have the basic fundamental right to negotiate their wages, and it is in no way comparison. I guess my scriptures come in now. You don't sell your birthright for a bowl of oatmeal. and that's my last question. I know we got a lot we could do. I'm loving this, but let me ask you this last one. We started in Mall Mondays in North Carolina. I can remember being challenged both within and without. People saying to us, don't use mall language. Don't use third reconstruction. Don't use mall language. It's too tainted already. If you use mall language, then people are going to identify you with, the very forward, so forth. We had a lot of resistance from our liberal friends. So-called, I don't use liberal and conservative, but that, from putting morality at the centrality, to talking about our deepest moral constitutional values, our deepest moral faith traditions of justice and love and righteousness and mercy and grace to speak to these issues of crisis. But why is it historically, based on how the union movement was able to organize in the past and today, for us not to give up our language, not to give up, moral categories, not to give it up, not to give up our convictions, right, as we build a labor struggle and continue building labor struggles and movements led by poor and low-wealth people, particularly in the South.
Right.
Particularly in the South. What? Yeah.
Well, this reversal where the most immoral forces have taken the language of morality, like the Jerry Falwells and others, that's new. That's like, 60s and 70s, something happened. Whereas the history that we've been talking about, all those movements, including Mine Mill and other unions, have always used moral language. One of the things I didn't get a chance to mention was the fact that faith leaders were at the forefront, those who were unwilling to be bought off by the company. But faith leaders were at the forefront of hosting union meetings. Union meetings for Mine Mill and others were like revivals, because they said, the companies are evil in terms of how they exploit us. And we need to right that evil, to flip it and create a moral economy that's based on our ability to live, to share with each other, to be able to survive, to put food on the table, to live in houses that are not cold. That this is the moral economy that we need. Moral economy was the common language of the working class. The right to go get wood from the forest, the right to make sure that we're all cared for. That's what the union was about. It was always driven by a language of morality. And it's only recently that language has been flipped. So one of the great things that you have done is basically shown the pathway to restore that moral language and that moral vision, which is what union's all about. That's what a union is fundamentally about.
Yeah, in fact, the greatest post-Easter scripture is in Acts, where it says, and when they were all on one accord, the purpose of the unity, and then it says, and they created a way so that none among them would be poor and without. So the union was utilized even in the early days of the church towards building a community of economic justice.
Right.
You know, the unity is not just unity in and of itself. The unity is a way of seeing life. It is a pathway forward. It is the recognition that the great creator of all that is did not create a monoverse, but a universe. Mm-hmm. Right? A universe. And that universe is supposed to work in a way that lifts all people. And nothing is more, I often say, Dr. Kelly, there are 22,000 scriptures in the Bible, Old and New Testaments, or Hebrew Bible and Christian New Testament, that speak to the issue of how sinful it is to mistreat the poor and the least of these, and children, those on the mark. 2,000, more than any other subject except one: idolatry, self-worship. And wherever there is a worship of self, there's an oppression of others. And I often say that these groups that started out, that decided that they wanted to make, say, being against gay people the number one moral issue, there might be 2, maybe 3 scriptures in the Bible that even speak to it, and all 3 of them are misinterpreted, and none of them can take away the requirement for us to love our neighbor as ourselves. But it's amazing how many people in so-called moral arenas, particularly when they want to talk about it from the Bible, say so much about what God says so little, and so little about what God says so much. And I think we cannot allow any more a hijacking of moral and religious language. It's just, you know, I say to folks, at best, it's theological malpractice. At worst, it's heresy. And even if it isn't from a faith perspective, I mean, you know, we were talking yesterday evening, I believe, the preamble of our Constitution talks about we. It talks about more perfect union, which is an admittance that we're not perfect. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. But then it declares you can't even get to the work that needs to be done. You don't have a liberty that's worthy of being passed on to your posterity. You can't even find your way to ensure domestic tranquility if you don't start with the establishment of justice.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
That proceed even when slaveholders were writing the Constitution. Maybe something got a hold of them. They don't. That my grandmama used to say, something got a hold of them. They didn't know what they were writing, but the fact that they wrote that in there and then suggested that you can't hold domestic tranquility without ensuring, you know, a commitment to the providing for the common defense and promoting the general welfare, and then somewhere you have to get all the way down to equal protection under the law for all persons. So even if it's not as a matter of faith, we cannot remove the moral critique, the moral art, the moral analysis when we talk about these moves, particularly with union rights and voting rights. This has been rich, and I'm looking forward to us working together in some additional ways, because I think that as this is happening, alongside all of this has to be a teaching piece, right? Particularly with the new activists, that helps everybody see that they're in a great tradition that's not new. And I want folk to take away that one line, that opening line, when you said the ruling class knows that they do not live in a conservative area in the South. They know that. That's why they spend grotesque and pornographic sums of money to keep it divided. That's why. Because they know if we all get together, what a day of transformation and justice is going to be. And you know what I feel like, Dr. Kelly? I feel like with Bessemer and Poor People's Campaign and others, if they fear what it would look like for us to get together, I think we ought to actualize their fear.
That's right.
But maybe if they fear, they'll go from being afraid to having like the fear of it from respect and come on over and join the union. So, brother, thank you so much. We're going to be together in a lot of ways, I believe, in the days to come.
Thank you. I'm at your call anytime.
Yeah. Well, I'm clear of one thing. We don't have to ask the question of you that was asked in the Kentucky labor wars. Which side are you on, my brother? Which side are you on? We know which side you're on. And look, and you got the footnotes to prove it. So thank you so much, Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Reverend
For all the media, thank you. God bless. For all of our people all across the country, this is powerful. This is rich. Listen, this coming Thursday, just before we go back to Bessemer, we're going to do Monday, Thursday in West Virginia. And the Poor People's Campaign there, and myself and others, and Liz, we're going to challenge Joe Manchin to come do a foot washing service with poor and low wealth workers, people who need a living wage of 15, who believe in federal voting law as a matter of our moral traditions, who believe that the filibuster is a tool of injustice. And we believe we got to wash and cleanse this nation of its injustices and greed and racism. And we're going to challenge him to come and hear the people who he's been voting against. He and others have been voting against. And we're going to ask him to come and wash their feet, to be humble enough to sit at their feet to hear that, and to join me and other clergy there as we do Monday, Thursday, but also have a national speak out in the national press conference. So tell everybody about that. But before we go there, we got to stay at Bessemer, and we got to say to folks, get those ballots in. You got a few more hours. Got a few more hours. Get them in and win. You've already won because you stood up, but we want you to win this ballot, this vote right now, and you still have time to do it. So, Rob, take it away and take us straight into the rally. God bless.
Great, thank you, Reverend Barber, and thank you so much, Professor Kelly, for joining us and giving us a historical context and undergirding for this movement and the possibilities that continue to emerge. We're going to go back to Bessemer, Alabama now for a powerful rally that happened last week, and some new footage that you haven't seen yet of when Bishop Barber and others tried to go to the Amazon warehouse and at the gates, and we're told to leave there too. He has a habit of being told to leave, it seems. So check it out. We'll start again with a little music to get us going, and then we'll close out later today, after this recap video from Monday with a different song from Reverend Dolly. So thank you so much, and please enjoy.
Well, now everybody's got a right to live singing. Everybody's got a right to live. Don't you let this campaign fail. Get those yes votes in the mail. Singing, everybody's got a right to live. Come on, y'all, sing. Everybody's got a right to live. I'm singing. Everybody's got a right to live. Don't you let this campaign fail. Get those yes votes in the mail, because everybody's got a right to live. Well, we're down in Alabama, feeling mighty mad about the fair and living wage that we never had. And that's why we sing the song, through our vote we will stay strong, because everybody's got a right to, everybody's got a right to, I'm singing, everybody's got a right to, don't you let this campaign fail. Get those yes votes in the mail, because everybody's got a right to live. Well, we're working down at Amazon, feeling mighty mad about the workers' union that we never had. That's why we sing this song, through our vote we will stay strong,
delighted to be able to introduce next Mr. Michael Foster. We are not related, but we do have the same last name. But he's a dynamite union organizer that has become one of my good best friends. And I'm about to introduce him now. Michael, would you come forward?
Yeah, Mike. How y'all doing this evening? All right. It's great to see everybody's coming out to support the movement that we have going on right now. It's beautiful just to see people, how they want to come out and help. And I got a couple workers here from Amazon, and I want to introduce the first one. The first lady that I'm going to call up is a great leader. She's the fighter, and her name is Linda Burns. Linda Burns. The whole world, Linda. Hey, listen.
Hello, everybody. Just like she said, I'm ready to fight. I'm ready to live. Amazon, Bezos, OMG. He's just horrible. And I'm ready for more wages, better wages. We want better time at work. We want to go to the bathroom at work. How could you work for somebody that's trillion, billion, whatever you want to call it? How can you work for them and they don't want you to go to the bathroom? If I go to the bathroom, it's going to take me 5 minutes to get there. When I get there, that don't necessarily mean I'm just going to use it, and it may take me longer. If I stay gone 15 minutes in the bathroom, which is 20 plus, the 5 to get there, and then I got to walk another 5 to get back. So that's 25 minutes. I'm gone from a machine. When I get back, it's a note across the scene saying, HR needs to talk to you. I'm like, what did I do? I just went to the bathroom. You get to HR. Well, Linda, your time on task. You got 25 minutes away. I was like, well, I just went to the bathroom. Somebody is supposed to come and relieve me while I go to the bathroom. We have an ADON light that we cut on. When we cut it on, it's a big machine, a big computer will let them know to go to this machine here or to go to this machine here. They'll walk by, they'll look at it, and they'll let you stand there. And when you go to the bathroom once again, you're going to get fired when you come back.
Oh.
They took our hazardous pay away. Why? Because we have COVID cases every week. I caught COVID in Amazon. They paid me for 2 weeks. I was out 3 weeks. They didn't pay me for the 3rd week. I said, okay. Upon that, I had to get a second job to make ends meet. I'm in school for nursing. I graduated in June. With that being said, I'm ready to fight. I am tired. I want everybody to hear me. We're in this together. If I have to come to Missouri, Cleveland, California, New York, I will. I'm fighting for everybody, not just me. It's not all about me, it's for everybody. And I'm ready. We got to fight for our right.
All right, y'all. Y'all just heard from Miss Linda Barnes, a dedicated worker at Amazon. I have another speaker here from Amazon, and his name is Emmett, and we're gonna let Emmett come up right now and give you a piece of his story.
Wow. Who would have thought all this would be this big? I work for Amazon, and I see a lot of people there. A lot of people who are frustrated. A lot of people who are tired. A lot of people who have no other option. And their conditions aren't what they need to be. It's not the conditions that they deserve. And we have to fight well, yes, this is happening at Amazon today, but it's not just Amazon. It's all the other giants out there too who are not treating their workers the way they should be. We have to not settle for what has been given to us, but demand what we deserve. And we cannot sit by and let our fellow man be taken advantage of. There's so much out there for everyone. There's enough for everyone, yet it's not given to us. And that is not right. We cannot continue like this, and we won't continue like this. And America says we will not continue like this. We are in this together, not just in Alabama, but across the country. And we have to continue fighting. No matter what happens with this vote, the bell has been rung, and it won't stop here. It'll continue from sea to shining sea. We will not be let down.
No, we won't.
There's a lot more of us than they expect, and we will not be silent anymore. So thank you. I didn't know that this would be so big. And stepping out here today for the rest of my coworkers is an honor, and it's my responsibility. So thank you for all the support. Thank you for helping us change the country. Thank you for what is to come in the future. We couldn't do it by ourselves, but together we can. So thank you. That's all I have to say today.
I am so pleased that when we extended an invitation to our next speaker, he eagerly said yes. And that is Reverend Dr. William J. Barber II, who is president and senior lecturer for the Repairers of the Breach and co-chair of the Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. I am so excited that he said yes to our invitation to come here and to support our groundwork that we were doing to support this movement and what the implications for it all over this country. Reverend Barber, thank you.
I want to first of all start by inviting some of the workers just to come a little closer with a placard, because I really don't have interest in the media seeing me. I want them to keep their eyes on you, and I want to see a little diversity, because one of the things I just said, this is a powerful sister right here. That's the national spot. Give her a placard. And my sister right here, because I want to show diversity. Come here, you got somebody to stand up here. Right, you see, because what's important, particularly in the South, that folk understand. And I was going to ask this before I say a word, and you all can just holler back the answer. Do you have black people organizing in this fight? Yes or no? Yes. Do you have white people organizing? Yes. Do you have brown people organizing? Yes. Do you have Asian people organizing? Yes. I want the nation to hear that, particularly as we come here from Alabama. And the invitation came, I don't even know how to say, you can't say no. And what we want to be clear is the reason we're here today, and this is a press rally, it's COVID safe. That's why you don't see the parking lot full. But what you've got, for the members of the media, are tens and tens and tens of thousands of people from all over the world and all over the country. You have major leaders from labor, from SEIU, representative from the AFL-CIO, Richard Trumpka, you got ASME, you have CWA, you have the commercial food workers. It's a large number of folk. They'll be speaking in a minute to the nation. But folk have decided that it's time to nationalize Bessemer. Right? That we don't believe change comes from DC down. Change comes from Birmingham up. Change comes from Bessemer up. Change comes from Alabama up. That's the movement. And it's time to nationalize this movement and help folk understand how this is their fight, but it's our fight, right? And it's a fight for some very huge things. My dear friend Leah Hunt is here, has worked with Way to Win, powerful group of women all over this country. And I want to kind of share that with you today. I call you all the Bessemer 6,000, right? The Bessemer 6,000. And it's some things I want to make sure the media understands. Understand this is a virtual rally. We didn't want everybody to come out here for safety purposes, but you better believe there are thousands and thousands of posts. There's media from all over the country. I want you also to know that we come here in a context. In Alabama, over 900,000 people are poor and low wealth. 900,000. The seventh highest in the nation. I want to invite the pastor, because I'm a pastor. If he's standing, this brother was with me when we were in Winston-Salem. He's real deal. He comes from Alabama. So if he would join and stand here with us. I want you to know, national media and local media, even 450,000 people in Alabama don't have health care. That's right. Because Alabama's been one of those states that's refused to just do something as simple as expand Medicaid. Alabama has the worst voting laws. In fact, it was the Shelby case that started here, that gutted the Voting Rights Act. It's important that we understand the context is the context. And one of the things we're coming here today is to say to Jeff Bezos and to the bosses over at the Amazon plant, listen, we told Jeff Clark to call off the dogs on Selma. We need you to call off these union-busting dogs. Yes, yes. We need you to call off these union-busting people that you have hired that are trying to stop people from voting. If it's an insult anywhere, it's surely an insult in Alabama. To literally try to lie and undermine people's right to vote, right? But I also want you to know that we know this. This is something we know, that strengthening the labor movement in the South is critical to any effort to transform this country. You cannot transform America and bring healing to America until you transform labor in the South, and unions are essential for poor and low wealth working people to build and demonstrate power. Secondly, we want people to be very clear, Carol, is that the union fight and the fight for voting rights and the fight against voter suppression is the same fight. Because all of those fights are fights to bring black, white, brown, Asian, Native, and poor and low wealth people together in the South. And 1/3 of all poor people live in the South. Poor and low wealth in the South. 1/3 of all poor and low wealth white people live in the South. In his book, The Strange Career of Jim Crow, the historian C. Van Woodard noted that segregation, let me teach you a little history and come to this moment, segregation was a political strategy employed by the wealthy interests of the South to keep the Southern masses of black and white folk divided so that they could keep the labor cheap. It wasn't just segregation because you don't like black people. Ta-Nehisi Coates teaches us that race is the child of racism. Racism comes first. And what racism is at its core is not just a hatred for black people, but it's a hatred of humanity. It is an economic strategy to keep people divided so that a few can have all they want. You got to understand, you cannot have a conversation about racial justice without talking about economic justice. You can't have a conversation about stopping voter suppression without stopping union busting. That's right. Because they come from the same core. That's why this week, 56 years ago, at the end of the Selma to Montgomery March, guess what? Dr. King connected the fight for voting rights and the fight for labor rights. Yeah. Now, a lot of people don't talk about that. Yeah. They think Selma was just about voting rights. That's right. But when Dr. King got to Montgomery, stood on those steps, this is what he said: the threat of the free exercise of the ballot by the Negro and white masses is what created a segregated society. This is what happened when the Negro and white masses of the South threatened to unite and build a great society, a society where greed and poverty would be done away with. The battle to suppress the vote and the battle to suppress labor rights has been the tactic used by the Southern white aristocracy to hold on to their money. And it's still true. The same money that's behind voter suppression is behind blocking labor rights. And we need to understand that. And so this is the first viable attempt to form a union at Amazon in the United States. You all are first, just like those folk were first to cross that bridge. This is not just Bessemer, this is the world. Bessemer is now ourselves. Huh?
Yeah.
Huh? This is the first attempt in Amazon, in the United States, to unionize. And 6,000 of you have been called to mail in your ballots. And the National Labor Relations Board said this has to happen. They can't block it. They're trying to suppress it, but they can't. Only way they can block it is you don't vote. The only way, right? And I want to thank the Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union and all of you who are here. Now, here's what's at stake. All the workers at the Amazon plant, and any plant that's not unionized, but let's talk about this one, are at-will employees. Means they can be fired at the will of the boss, no just cause. But if you have a union, you become just cause employee. You shift. Right now you're at will. When the union, it becomes just cause. They have to have a just cause in order to fire them. Furthermore, you can call on the union to help mediate and file charges on behalf of the worker. Now, Amazon said last year, and I've got to talk about this because some folk not gonna like it, but you know, so what? I'm too old to lie now. And Jeff Bezos last year said he was concerned about Black Lives Matter. That's what he said. And to show his concern, he said he was gonna give $10 million to black organizations. Chump change.
Yeah.
And he was going to organize other groups to give some millions of dollars to organizations. I want to say today that Amazon doesn't care about black lives if you give chump change to black organizations, but then block union and labor rights for the workers right here in Bessemer. Don't play with us like that. In fact, every national organization that is taking money from Jeff Bezos ought to give it back until he stops the attack on these workers. 85% of the workers at this plant are black, 5,800. The rest are white and Latino. But don't play with us. You can't give us 30 pieces of silver. Ha! And then undermine and say you care about black folk. You care about black folk, let them have labor rights. Care about black folk, let them have sick leave and health care. You care about black folk, don't pay a woman 2 weeks when she needs 3 weeks because she got sick in your plant. Jeff Bezos has seen his personal wealth skyrocket from $113 billion to $189 billion during COVID. Hear what that means? 8 million more poor people went into poverty during COVID. But Jeff Bezos made money. Billionaires made $1.5 trillion during COVID.
You're right.
$1.5 trillion during COVID. 20,000 Amazon employees got COVID by October of 2020. And then, you know what the company did? This company that claims, and I'm through, this company that claims that it cares so much, they cut hazard pay while they were increasing the hourly work. Now, we have a phrase for that. I'm a preacher, but we have a phrase for that, and Jesus used the word, so I can use it. That's a damn shame. That same thing Jesus said to that fig tree, when that fig tree was putting on, like it was a fig tree, but it wasn't producing any fig. Jesus said, I damn you, because you're putting on. To say you care about folk and 20,000 of your employees catch COVID, and then you give them a little bit of hazard pay, and then as soon as folk not watching, you take it back, while at the same time you're increasing their work, and that would have never happened if you had the union. But not only that, Amazon has tried to do everything they could. They send mass text messages out. Y'all need to know this in the nation. You know, we mad about what Trump did with text messages. You ought to see what Amazon's doing. Huh? They send messages out with lies, claim it's going to cost jobs. Then they make the workers go to classes, and then the instructors try to scare the workers. And then when the workers don't know the truth and stand up and say, no, that's not true, they call them to the front of the class and take a picture of their badge, their worker. That's what's happening right here in Alabama. And Alabama already knows that. That's the kind of foolishness they did back in the days of the civil rights movement. Intimidation. And then lastly, 19 workers, as I said, have died. The workers need a union and a contract. The movement doesn't end with March 29th. The movement gets another spark. Truth of the matter is, you win this battle here, it opens up the whole South. You are going to win. And you win here, it's going to be just as big as when they won going across that bridge. Because it's going to open up the whole conversation again and the whole action around connecting the battle against racism and the battle against denying people labor rights and union. So you are here today, a part of a movement that Dr. King foresaw 56 years ago. When he said it on that step, so that whenever we figure out that the whole goal of racism is to keep the poor white masses and poor black masses and brown masses separated. And if we figure out, as you are doing here, that we aren't going to be separated anymore, and you win, this is the kind of fusion coalition that can change the South. It did it before, and it can do it again. And what you are doing here is showing the nation how to build the kind of power that's necessary to raise the 140 million poor and low wealth people up out of poverty for real, and to get the 87 million people health care. This is a part of America's third Reconstruction. You are not just workers in a small plant in Bessemer. Nobody really knew the name of Selma 56 years ago. That's right. Nobody didn't really know it. But when God got through, when the people got through, when they organized black and white and brown together, and they wouldn't let anything turn them back, and they won. Ever since then and until the end of time, forever and a day, people know the name Selma. You winning, people will know the name Bessemer and the Bessemer 6,000. And your name will give people courage to fight all over this country. And when we change the South, we change the nation. Yes, we will. You want healing to come? Establish justice in the South. Right here. And then we can be ensured of domestic tranquility. So I just wanted to come to stand with you, not talk for you, but to stand with you and to help the nation to understand, to say to the nation, this is a national issue. Yes. It just happens to be located once again in the heart of the South. Birth of the South. In Alabama. Yes, sir. Alabama, you did it before. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. They tried to rock your boat with officers on horseback, but you did it before. Yeah. They tried to stop you with dogs in parks, don't you see? But you did it before. Yeah. They shot some of you, but you did it before. Listen. They had a governor that said segregation yesterday, today and tomorrow. Did it before. So Jeff Bezos really ain't your problem, because you face worse. Like David in the Bible, you've already faced the bears and the lion. A Goliath ain't really that much, because no matter how big a man is, he ain't stronger than a lion or a bear. So you've already proven what you can do. All you need to do is just do it one more time. God bless you. All right. This is supposedly the gate. Now you can tell that this road probably wasn't just built by Amazon money. It's public money. But again, it shows the way in which the anti-union forces get all involved with local political forces. I'm sure they paid all kinds of money and got all kinds of promises. And there are people that will say, well, it's best to have the plant. But it's not just good to have the plant. You need the plant, you need to pay, you need the contract, you need the union rights. Be careful, because Amazon doesn't do business without a contract. So why would they want their workers to work without a contract? So we wanted to come here because, I can see what y'all can't see. I don't believe you should just stop because somebody tells you can't do something. And so they had one of their people to come out He said it was a rule. I said, well, can we call PR? He said, yeah, but it's a rule. He said, they don't like you to come on. And I thought about that. They really don't like the media. They don't like attention, Leah. They don't like somebody telling the truth. They don't like workers organizers. They don't like it. The greedy don't like it. The voter suppressors don't like it. They don't like it, especially down here in Alabama, because the same people that are organizing those plants and win, they're going to be the same people organizing the community to vote and organizing lawsuits against voter suppression. And the more we bring people together, cross these racial lines, we start fulfilling the dream and the hopes of the civil rights movement. So we're here in the middle of the battle in Alabama once again. This is a state issue that must be nationalized. And not only that, you know, Jeff Bezos and these corporate leaders think they can throw around a little money to organizations and say they're concerned about black lives, but then they block wages for black lives, or we block caring for black workers. We heard a lady say that they didn't even want to pay her full amount when she got sick with COVID. They want to be able to fire black and white people at will. 20,000 people caught COVID in Amazon during COVID. Bezos's money went up. People's health went down. While his money was going up, he cut their hazard pay. And he says, trust me, I'll pay you a little bit, but we don't need trust in words, we need a contract. We need a labor union contract. That's what we've always needed. Write it on paper. Write it on paper, not just in mouth, write it on paper. And so here we are today, and walking down from the plant, but the people are standing up inside the plant. And this is what sends trembling fears. They don't even want us to do a video. I want y'all to think about that. They don't want them to do a video in supporting the workers. But we asked them today, is it a law or a rule? That's why we got out of the car. We don't stop because of people's rules, because folk gonna always tell you what you can't do till you test it. And even if it was a law, we would figure, maybe we might even figure out a time to break it nonviolently. But the bottom line is, light is what the folk in Bessemer need. And we need you all to see these videos to show light on this. Everybody in the nation should be standing with the Bessemer 6,000. Any organizations that have benefited from Jeff Bezos, his money, should either give it back or should say to him, or should go all out, say we take it and we're gonna fight. But more importantly, you should not rest. You cannot purchase the silence or the muted voice of the civil rights community or the black community or the progressive white community. Bessemer and the Bessemer 6,000 fight is as huge to the future of this country as the march across the Edmonds Bridge. They win, we all win. They win. Lindsey Graham is trembling now. The new senators from Alabama is trembling because they cannot. Ted Cruz is trembling now because they know that black, white, brown, Native, Asian unity in the South, standing against racial voter suppression and standing against economic injustice and anti-union forces, is the key. It is a critical key. And I want to live long enough to see the key be put in the keyhole and unlock what I want to see, what it unlocks. I can't wait to see what it unlocks. So if you about justice, if you about black folk being treated right and white folk being treated right and brown folk being treated right, then you need to be about the Bessemer 6,000. Everybody in, nobody out. We all win together, forward together, not one step back.
Great, thank you, Bishop Barber, and for everyone that participated in that great action in Alabama last week. The Bessemer 6,000 have done their work. They are voting and organizing. The RWDSU, the Alabama Poor People's Campaign, are in good hands and are going to keep on fighting, and we're going to keep on encouraging them. Now it's your turn to take up your part in this. And so we encourage you, please, to call your senator now to demand the protections to the end of the right to work laws that we learned today and know are relics of Jim Crow just as much as voter suppression is, to demand strengthening the power of the NLRB to impose fines when corporations like Amazon has in Alabama violated the rules, and to push a whole host of other protections. And so if you go to the link, the bit.ly is in front of you. If you go to our website, poorpeoplescampaign.org, you'll also be able to find it and you'll get the talking points and all the messaging that you need in the background. On behalf of both the co-chairs, Reverend Dr. William Barber and Reverend Dr. Liz Theo Harris, we want to give great thanks to the RWDSU and the organizers and workers in Alabama for hosting us last week and for inviting us down there and for all their work. And our prayers and our solidarity is with you. We also want to thank, on behalf of the co-chairs, Dr. Robin Kelly. On this Monday of Holy Week, we can answer the question, does anything good come from Winston-Salem, North Carolina? And I think we can very strongly say yes, not just because I'm from there, but Dr. Kelly is too, and our Vice President, Roz Pellis as well, home of one of the most successful interracial union movements in the South at Reynolds Tobacco in the 40s. And so we will be returning now to a closing song, but we will be back next Monday on April 5th, on Easter Monday, to launch a Faith Moral Monday, Making Holy Trouble, as we push forward the insistence that we not have labor rights and voting rights be held back by a relic of Jim Crow in the filibuster. And so stay tuned for a major announcement and campaign starting on Monday, April 5th. Today is, of course, the first Moral Monday, when Jesus turned the tables over and refused to abide by an economic system that would exploit our people. And so now we'll leave you with this song and pick up your phones, or actually just go to the link, and it's very easy. You put your information in, and then they'll call you and connect you to your senators via the switchboard. But thank you all so much for joining us today. Forward together, not one step back.
Teaching us how to fight. Say he fought all day and he fought all night until he got it right. Sing it, which side are you on? My people, which side are you on? I'm singing, which side are you on? My people, which side are you on? Oh, Poor People's Campaign, we are freedom fighters. We're teaching you how to fight. We're fighting all day and we're fighting all night until we get it right. I'm singing, which side are you on? My people, which side are you on? Singing, which side are you on? My people, which side are you on? Well, now, Pam Foster is a freedom fighter. She's teaching us how to fight. Well, she's fought all day and fought all night until she got it right. Come on and sing it. Which side give me some money. Turn this up, son. My people, which side are you on? Oh, yeah. My people, which side are you on? Miss Dolly, sing it with me. Miss Dolly is a freedom fighter, teaching us how to fight. Well, fighting all day, fighting all night, till I get it right. Everybody say it now. Which side are you on? If you're out there online,
workers. Come on,
Well,
say
now,
it. The Amazon workers.
the freedom fighters.
Say it.
Teaching us how to fight.
You better say it. You better say it.
Fighting all day and they're fighting all night until they get it right.
Let I hear you.
Which side are you on? God people, which side are you on? Which side are you on? God people, which side are you on?
Don't get it twisted.